Today we're going to talk about a thinker who completely changed the game when it comes to education. His name was Paulo Freire, and he saw education not just as a way to learn stuff, but as a powerful tool to literally change the world. And believe me, his ideas are more important now than they've ever been.
So let's just start with the question that I think we've all felt at some point, right? Have you ever sat in a class and thought, is this it? Is school just about someone pouring facts into my head like I'm an empty jug? Well, Freire said that for a lot of people, that's exactly what it is, and he thought it was a huge problem.
And he came up with this brilliant name for it, the banking model of education. It's one of those metaphors that once you hear it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. Seriously, this one idea might just change how you think about every single class you've ever been in. So here's the concept in a nutshell. The teacher has all the knowledge, and their job is to make deposits of that knowledge into the students. The students? Well, they're just passive bank accounts, right? They're there to receive the information, memorize it, and then spit it back out on a test. There's no creativity, no questioning, it's just a transaction. Does that sound familiar at all? I bet it does.
And this really shows the difference. On one side, you've got that banking model we just talked about. The teacher deposits, students are just containers, and it has nothing to do with their actual lives. But look at the other side. That's Freire's vision. It's a humanist education where knowledge isn't just given, it's created together. Students become active creators, and the whole point of learning is to connect it to your reality, and maybe even change it.
So who was this guy with such a radical idea? You know, Freire's philosophy didn't come from some stuffy university library. It was forged in the fire of his own life in Brazil. You can actually trace his entire philosophy through his life story. He didn't learn his first words in a classroom. He learned them under a mango tree, connecting words to the world he could see and touch. Then, the Great Depression hit his family hard. He knew what hunger felt like. Later, when he started working with working-class families, he had a breakthrough. Lecturing didn't work. But dialogue, talking with them instead of at them, that changed everything. And his work became so effective, so powerful, that the military dictatorship in Brazil saw him as a threat, arrested him, and forced him into exile for years. See, for Freire, the banking model wasn't just a lazy way to teach. He saw it as a piece of a much larger, much more sinister system of control that he called the culture of silence.
So what did he mean by that? Well, he argued that the whole system, the economy, the politics, was designed to make marginalized people feel powerless. It's designed to make them believe that they have nothing valuable to say, that their experiences don't count, that their voice just doesn't matter. And over time, they fall silent.
And this quote from him, wow, it just hits you right in the gut. So often do they hear that they are good for nothing, that in the end they become convinced of their own unfitness. That's the real trap of oppression. The system works by convincing you to silence yourself.
But here's the amazing part. Freire didn't just diagnose the disease, he created the cure. He developed a whole new kind of education, one designed specifically to break that culture of silence and set people free.
At the absolute heart of his philosophy is this one kind of tricky word, conscientization. I know, it's a mouthful. But the idea behind it is actually pretty simple and incredibly powerful. It just means waking up. It's the process of learning to see the world clearly, to understand the political and social forces that shape your life, and to question them.
So how do you actually do it? Freire broke it down into 3 steps. First, you have to perceive. You have to learn to see your reality for what it truly is, not what you've been told it is. Second, you criticize. You start asking why. Why are things this way? Who benefits? And then comes the most important step, transform. It's not enough to just think about it. You have to take action, together, to change it.
And what's the engine that drives this whole process? It's dialogue. And not a debate where you're trying to win, but a real conversation. It has to be built on trust and empathy. It's about creating knowledge together, and it's always focused on solving real problems. At its core is this beautiful belief that every single person is capable of looking at their life and changing it for the better.
Okay, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds wonderful in theory, but does it actually work in the real world? Oh yeah, the results were absolutely incredible.
So let's go to one of his most famous projects. It's 1963 in a rural town in Brazil called Angicos. The goal was to teach adults how to read and write. Adults who had been told their entire lives that they were too poor, too uneducated, too simple to learn.
Who were the students? Not a small hand-picked group. We're talking about 300 farm workers, people who worked in the fields all day, every day. So how long do you think it took? A year? 6 months? Nope. Using Freire's method, it took them just 45 days to learn to read and write. Let that sink in for a second. In less than 2 months, 300 people didn't just learn some letters. They learned that they had a voice.
And this wasn't some one-off miracle. Freire's ideas spread like wildfire all over the world. Jump forward a few decades to a state in India, where these exact same principles sparked a huge social movement.
So here's what happened. A literacy program starts up, and as the women in the program learned, they started to talk to each other. And through that dialogue, they realized they all shared the same devastating problem. A cheap, toxic liquor called Arrack was fueling alcoholism and tearing their families apart.
Learning to read became the first step to reading their world. That shared understanding sparked collective action. They organized, they protested, they fought the system, and guess what? They won. They forced the entire state to ban Arrack. That is what Freire's education looks like in the real world.
So what's the big takeaway here? What does all this mean for us? Well, Freire's work totally redefines what education is even for.
He gave us this profound concept. Learning to read the word, the letters on a page, that's just the beginning. The real goal is to learn how to read the world, to understand the systems and structures that control your life so you can gain the power to not just accept your reality, but to rewrite it.
It all comes back to that big idea. The point of education isn't just to pass a test or get a diploma. Its true purpose is to awaken our consciousness, to help us see the world and our own power in it with brand new eyes.
So I'll leave you with this to think about. In your own life, it doesn't matter if you're a student, a teacher, a manager, a parent, how can you push back against that banking model? How can you take learning in any form and turn it from a one-way monologue into a real, active, world-changing dialogue?